Hey everybody, welcome back to the Men of the Kingdom podcast. My name is Kyle. This is my co-host Aaron. If you're new to the channel, we first off want to say welcome. The purpose of all this is very simple. We want to help men live successful lives according to God's design. And if you are one of our faithful viewers, we want to say welcome back. If you have not already, make sure you like and subscribe to stay notified on all of our latest content. We're pushing out new episodes pretty often, and we don't want you to miss anything, like the episode that we have planned tonight. Aaron, what do we got for these guys?
So we got a treat for you guys tonight. If you're a man who wants to optimize your life spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, if you want to grow into the man that God designed you to be and the leader of your family, might be leading your wife, your children, your friends, whatever that might look like for you, we have a special guest for you tonight. We hung out with Amos Buelow, founder of the Men of the Character course, a course designed to help you optimize all those things. And Amos laid it down in this episode. He talked about his best tips to help you grow spiritually, what it looks like to lead as a godly man, how to step out even in times where that might be scary, and all of the above. So get your notebook handy. Be like Kyle. He's got his notebook handy. That thing's packed with notes. Grab your favorite pen, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Amos Buelow. Amos, it's great to have you here. I appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to hang out with us. Looks like you're getting a little bit of sunshine there in Sioux Falls. Things are warming up, and I know you're doing the 75 hard. How's that been going so far for you?
It's been fantastic. If you guys don't know what that is, basically it's a practice of mental toughness, mental discipline. That's the reason I'm doing it. I've never been someone to be able to do something consistently for more than 14, 21 days at a time. So this is basically you do for 75 days, 5 different things perfectly without messing up. And if you mess up, you're supposed to start over. So I got some people doing it with me, keeping me accountable, but I like to be in the leading position because it holds me to a higher standard. So it's enjoyable. Here's my gallon of water too. I got just a little bit less. So
I'm glad you clarified so that our viewers didn't think you were just ripping a whole thermos of coffee during the show. Yeah, they'd have been like, no wonder he's got such good answers.
That's awesome. Well, I think Amos, just to kind of kick us off here, we know a little bit about you from some of the conversation we've had, but people who may not be familiar with what you do and kind of, your Facebook group and kind of why you started that. Can you just give us a brief intro, maybe a little bit about growing up, who you are, and then kind of what you do now and why you even started it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well rehearsed. This is a great question. Basically, my business is called Man of Character. It wasn't always called that, and I'll explain the progression that led up to it. What started me into this type of work is that my dad, my brothers, my grandpa are all pastors. I even had a great grandpa who died in a prison in Ukraine as a missionary. So long line of generational faith that's been passed down. And because of that, because of my dad, because of my brothers being role models, them instilling some good character in me and me being able to see that, I've always loved to help people. I've always loved to seek out the person who's left out and make them feel comforted and welcome. So I feel like I've been doing this since I was a little kid. It feels natural to me. And then on top of that, I thought about being a pastor like 10 different times going through high school. Finally decided to not go that direction, even though my brothers did and a lot of family members. And the reason being is because I felt like I had a different skill set or a different purpose that I was yet to find. So I went to school for exercise science, got a degree in exercise science, started working at a gym because that's a very personal one-on-one type of way. And I love sports, love being athletic, taking care of myself. Got a job at a gym, managed the gym for a bit. But it was at that point that I realized that I wanted to be more involved, not just in church, but also in my work with people, to be able to help them with more than just fitness, because people would come into the gym and they'd be struggling in marriage, at the brink of divorce, or they'd be having troubles with their kids. They'd be mentally just burnt out from whatever position they were in at work. So all these things were happening and I was in a position to talk to them, but I wasn't in a position to help them. And I didn't have the standing and the position to make that possible. So I started looking around on how to make a shift. Saw that coaching was a thing, health coaching, life coaching, all these terms. So I became a health and life coach, went through an institute that wasn't Christian. However, it gave me the structure to really get confident in what the business model was for coaching and how to structure a program. So I took that program and I started just playing with it. I started manipulating it. I started pulling things out. I started putting my own things in while seeking out more education, hiring business coaches, getting wisdom from people that have done this before and Christian men. And then I quickly found out that I started out with like a health coaching program and so I'd get like 40, 50-year-old women that wanted to lose weight. And there's like huge disconnect. I was able to help them, but that's not me. And that's not who I typically relate to. And when you're coaching, you find out that really the reflection of who you are is who you want to work with, because it's the easiest. First of all, you have the most insight into it, especially at a young age. I'm only 26. So I was able to relate to people that were like me, that were wanting to strive for the same things as me. And basically you're 5 to 10 steps ahead, leading the way and encouraging them and taking the initiative. So I niched down into now helping Christian men, husbands and fathers specifically, because I got a 2-year-old, I have a wife. So a lot of the guys I work with are engaged all the way through, married and have 3 to 4 kids, and they're looking to grow in excellence. So the name changed, the whole structure changed. I now have a 14-week curriculum, the Man of Character program that I take them through, 5 different pillars that we go through to establish discipline, increase time, energy, and focus, and then help the family, bring the family along in your physical health, cleaning out the house, spiritual disciplines, long-term goals, vision, values. And then once you have all that set in place, you work on the marriage specifically, because that's your teammate, your partner. And then finally, how am I going to serve fully with my time and my skills and my talents? Now that you have the character built up, you got to do something with it. So you multiply your talents and you figure out where you can serve in your current responsibilities, but also what you can grow into with your family and help society move forward.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I do have a question on that. So Aaron, I don't know if you know this, he's actually getting married next month to a great woman. Now that you kind of found your group of people, married men and fathers, that's who you want to work with. Is there a common challenge or problem or sin or whatever it is that you find a specific group of men, that group of men namely, struggles with? Or is it the same struggles that a single 22-year-old would struggle with? Or is it different as you get married? Like, what have you experienced? What are some of the challenges these guys talk to you about that say, hey, Amos, I need help here. This is where I'm falling short. Is there a theme, or does it vary person to person?
Yeah, there's general themes for this group of people, because the main idea is that they want to grow as a person. They want to do more. They want to be a great husband and a great father. And so the drive is there. The drive has to be there in order to move forward. What they struggle with is knowing, on one side, just practically what that looks like, practically how to stay consistent in their discipline. So consistency and discipline. And that's why I'm doing 75 hard, because I need to reach that next level myself so I can bring people along with me to that next step. And so I got to practice what I preach. But consistency in that discipline of physical health, taking care of your body, making sure that your family is taking care of their bodies. It's a healthy household. And then practically in the spiritual realm is, are you actually leading your family in simple things like prayer, in devotion, in nighttime routines? These are all very practical things that just fall off, and they might give the responsibility away at that point. And so when they start giving responsibility away to the wife or to the school for physical health and spiritual health and just the direction of the family, then they start to lose their leadership. Then they start to lose their confidence. They start to become pretty lax with the way that they discipline the household, because they kind of feel like an imposter at that point. They don't feel like they have the respect required to make the necessary changes and lead the family where it has to go. So all in all, they're lacking in responsibility as a result of not having the disciplines set in place, first of all, and not having just clarity as to what are our family values and what do we hold to, and not letting the family go any other way when it's related to the direction of the household. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it certainly does.
So yeah, I have a question on that, just from the sense of, because how long have you been married for, Amos?
coming up on 5 years.
5 years. Jeez, that's crazy. So you got married. You're how old are you now? You're 25, 26?
26, right?
Yeah,
21 you
26.
got married at. You were a young cat.
Yeah, young for our culture, but hey,
True.
all of our grandpas got married at 18 and 19, so
It's fair.
That's true. My question that came up when you were talking about that is, I would just be curious, and this is a question for myself, but I'm sure guys watching it too. You talk about some of those things. Give us the really quick abbreviated version of what that looks like in the life of Amos. Like, what are you and Kelsey's, if you don't mind sharing, you share as much or as little as you'd like. What are you and Kelsey's, relationship values, vision? Like, what are some practical ways that you, as the man of your house, are leading, your wife, and you have one daughter, right?
Yeah, just one daughter.
Yeah. So I'd just be kind of curious. I'm obviously, going to be married, no children. But I'd be curious, like, as we grow into that, just what that looks like and how you guys went about like setting those up. I'm just curious about that. It sounds awesome, and I love the sounds of it. I just wanted to know how you got from discussions to implementation and what the process was.
Yeah, really good question. And what's neat about it is that it's always changing. And so because it's always changing, there needs to be a constant line of communication or a constant check-in, a constant checkpoint. So over and above anything, you got to have clear communication with your wife. And inside of that clear communication, then you have complete respect for each other, knowing that you're coming from a position of this is us. There's no me, there's no you. It's just us. That's it. You're never facing each other. You're always going next to each other. So that's how our communication always is. And the reason that we can do that is because we start the day with, I'll bring this all back together, kind of jump around.
Keep it rolling.
The reason we can communicate so well is because we have our foundation in God's word, first of all. So always leaning on God's promises, having that as the kind of the beginning and the end of the day. You're tying up the ends of your days in a productive fashion. And this is nothing new. Having a strong, solid morning routine where there's always daily devotion. There's always daily insight into God's word or an article or something. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the Bible, but something like that in the morning always happens. We constantly and at night, we say a prayer. And we're always doing a nighttime routine with Charlotte. And she begs for it. I mean, kids love structure. They love consistency. And she can pray now, and she won't let us leave the room until we've sung something like Jesus Loves Me and set our set of prayers, our standard prayers. And so we have structure in that way. And because we have that at the beginning and the end of the day, we never miss a Sunday of church, no matter what, because that's our number one value. Since that is clear, now we can approach each other with gentleness, with love, with respect. They're all just fruits of being in God's word. So that's first of all, it has to be number one. And then secondly, we are constantly in these communication, or when we're communicating with each other, we're clearing up anything that needs to be cleared up. We're talking, we're open to discussing anything that needs to be discussed right away, because we respect each other and there's that trust there. So we can always work through issues and from a place of respect and coming next to each other. And then we're always looking to grow as people, as one of our values. We want to grow as people. So we discuss with each other what our passions are at the moment, or what's happening in our lives, and what we're wanting to work towards, building goals, having goal journals. Like, she has her own journal that works really well for her. I have a monthly planner that I track things on. And so we do have resources and tools that we both have found that work well for us, but we talk to each other about it and we encourage each other through it. I consult her on her business and she talks to me about what I got going on. And then finally, like, our actual lives are filled with the things that we want to have responsibility in, that we want to have interactions with people in. So all of my responsibilities are what I want them to be right now. And then same for her. So we're constantly we're staying the track. We're filling our schedule with the things that matter most to us. And then it just adjusts over time. So
Cool. Yeah,
hopefully that was helpful.
That's sweet. I might have to have a one-on-one coaching session to dig into that before June 24th. So yeah, that's good stuff. Thanks, Amos.
Tools help. I mean, you can have tools, and the tools really are a means to open up communication.
Right.
It's good for you to write stuff down and to get it out of your head and just spend the time putting down goals, putting down a vision, because people don't do that. And once you do that, it allows you to see 10 years down the future that, you know, if I send my kid to, and this is just personal opinion, but based on what I've seen, if I send my kid to public school all the way through grade school and high school, based on all the evidence that I have, they're going to be a lot more likely to fall into the sinful world and just be drawn away into it, as opposed to maybe sending them to a Christian private school and making that a priority. So that's when you got to think long term about the decisions right now. But those tools just open up communication so you can have the important conversations every single week.
Yeah, that's great.
Before we transition away from marriage, I had a question. I was asking Aaron about this last night, but in Ephesians 5, it talks about, it's pretty famous passage, like wives submitting to your husbands, husbands laying down your lives for your wives, like Christ did the church, that pretty popular scripture. So I'm curious, in your own life or with some of the guys you work with, was that a challenge for you when you, like, well, I guess the question is, what was the biggest challenge when you got married? Was there any like headbutting where, to follow what that passage said, I'm assuming your wife's from a Christian household too, was it an easy adjustment? Or I guess early on in marriage, you hear a lot of these stories where it is adjustment. You're a single guy, it's a single girl, and then you're coming together as one to live this life together. Was it a challenge at all? And if so, what was the hardest part and how did you guys overcome it? And from like a biblical perspective, how have you seen that play out in your own marriage or with some of the guys you work with in your clients?
Yeah, this is a really good question, because this is also another area that I really had to grow in. I wouldn't say that it was a big challenge, because I've always felt that marriage is only as hard as you think it is. I've never felt like marriage is hard, because you're always coming from a place of us. It's we, it's a team, like they're you, we're one and the same, we're one in flesh. So in that way, there's never anything negative related to marriage that I think. But the challenge for me and for us came from the fact that her dad was a business owner, and she likes to be in charge. She likes to, she started a business and she wants to be her own boss, and she's very organized and talented. And so she holds me up to a higher standard because she's coming in with all these skill sets. And then for me, I really kind of went the other direction. I've always been compassionate and go with the flow, able to kind of adapt to the situation and be easygoing. So I came in from that perspective. So we balanced each other out in a way, but we were both sort of in charge, both sort of taking the authority role, both wearing the pants at the same time. So that was the challenge, because when you're in that situation, you're not really the attractive man that God really laid out for you to be as the provider and the protector. And providing can mean different things for different people, but I wasn't really stepping into the authority aspect of leadership and the responsibility aspect of leadership. We were equally taking on responsibilities. And the main thing that I had to learn, and I hired a coach. I just finished his program just like a month ago or a month and a half ago, because I needed to learn how to be the family captain, which is the name of his program. Fantastic guy, pastor. He speaks directly from the Bible on the roles of male and female.
And who is that?
His name is John Michael Clark.
Okay, cool.
And the program is called the Family Captain. He's an incredible teacher and spot on with everything. So I hired him because I needed to learn. He talks about the 3 legs of leadership. There's compassion, and this is for the man. Compassion, authority, and responsibility. I was really good at compassion. I'm pretty good at authority. I'm a very confident person, confident in my abilities, my character, my values, the Bible. But responsibility. So authority a little bit, and then responsibility was really lacking, because I wasn't taking full responsibility for my household, full responsibility for the direction of the family. And we were kind of doing it together. And so she kind of saw me not knowingly, but she saw me as more of a child, because I could easily pass blame, or not take responsibility, or just sit back and say, well, God's going to take care of it and it's all good, instead of taking that extra step and initiative to move forward while praying at the same time. So anyways, I've gotten a lot better at it, and I'm more attractive for it too. That's what JM talks about, John Michael Clark. So even sex was challenging to the point where she's too stressed. She doesn't feel protected. She doesn't feel like she's being nurtured in the garden. And so she doesn't have any sexual drive. And so that was like one of the things that we struggled with for a while. But it's really flipped around.
Yeah. It's okay if I jump in one more time.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, one thing, just to comment on that, I think it's so funny. We've talked about this so many times, just like the role of guys and girls, what they find attractive, vice versa. And it's like we live in this culture now where they try to say we're all the same. We don't need it. It's so counterculture, but at the end of the day, how God made people, you see it evident. And you just spoke to it too, like what the man's called to do, what's the role the woman's supposed to play. And when those things are out of line, you feel the conflict, whether it's in like the sexual portion or just how you're leading in that relationship. So it's funny to hear you go through that and talk about it, because we've talked about this a handful of times. But one thing you said, and it kind of reminded me, there's somebody in my life very close to me. We were kind of talking about it before we got on here, and she's with a guy who they're just not, she's expressed on a couple of occasions where she feels almost more like his mother, like he's kind of in this place. And I think he's in a place mentally where he's lacking that direction in life. He's kind of going through depression, just wants to come home and like isolate himself, play video games, whatever it is. And so I kind of want to transition to more of that, because you're obviously a coach, you help people, mostly married men. But I think there are a lot of guys, especially younger ones in their, teens, 20s, where they're like, I have no idea what I want to do in life. They're just kind of blocking out responsibility that you just talked about. And there's no hope for a future. So I kind of want to take some time on this topic, because I know there's some people close to you as well. And so what advice would you give to guys? Because I have a couple of them where they're just kind of stagnant or stuck in life, where there's no hope. They're just kind of going through the motions. That's a hard place to pull yourself out of mentally. I don't know if you've ever experienced that in your own life, but working with guys, like, have you seen that? And how would you kind of advise guys? Maybe it's a coaching step by step. Here are the things I would advise you to do. Because I don't think it's like a flip of the switch. Okay, I know what I want to do. I feel like I'm on purpose, blah, blah, blah. These guys are not pursuing the Lord from what I could tell. And that's obviously a huge component too, which I'll let you talk about. But what's kind of like at least a roadmap or some advice you'd give these guys that are just literally stuck mentally and where they're at in life?
Yeah, great question. And so important, because it does happen to tons of people. First of all, I would make sure that I teach them and touch on what they believe their purpose, what that actually means to have a purpose or a calling, because I feel like a lot of coaches and a lot of culture is telling you you're special. You are so special. You were specially designed for one specific purpose or one specific job. Even they might go as so far as to say, and it's completely wrong. It's completely wrong, because an actual vocation, a calling, is any area of life that you have responsibility in. And that might be something that you chose. It might be something that you didn't choose, something that you just inherited. Maybe you accidentally got a girl pregnant and now you have a child. That's inherited responsibility that you have to take charge of, but that's a calling. Your calling is to take care of that child. So I would teach that. That's not necessarily where I would start, but I would make sure I understand where they're coming from, what they're actually looking for. What do you mean you want what do you mean you don't have purpose? Like what does purpose mean to you? So first you got to understand where they're coming from always. You got to communicate, you got to ask questions. That's the way to approach anyone in that situation, because you can't ever come in to a conversation like that, especially if you don't have maybe mutual respect or relationship built up, and say, look, you got to do this and you should do this. And this is step number one. Be like me. It doesn't work. And that's where people can immediately go wrong and you just lose your opportunity. So that's my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice is you got to start with the things that everyone knows is true. And so you can go to if they believe that the Bible is true, you're well on your way to helping them out, because then you can go into some biblical principles. But what I mean by, you got to go to where what you know is true. Everyone knows that if they move their body, if they exercise, they're going to feel better. It's like the simplest science you can know. Everyone knows. If I go for walks, I'm going to feel better. These are all the benefits. And so start there with what they already agree with you. And that's where you can get the quickest wins. If you can start to get out of this cycle of depression and anxiety and cyclical pleasure seeking, that's where now you have another opportunity to bring in something a little bit deeper, maybe offer the next step. And the next step is, hey, let's actually talk about, again, what purpose actually is. Now you have the ability to educate, and they're open to it, because now they're feeling pretty good. They got a little bit more energy, they got a little bit more focus. They're maybe even a little happy at times. And so now they're open. Now they're open to education. Now you can meet with them and consult with them about what do you actually want in life? What are you looking for? What are you passionate about? Because now they can see past tomorrow.
Right.
Now they can actually think to the next month, because they're out of that cyclical pleasure-seeking day. So that'd be the next thing. And then once they actually establish goals, they gotta have support, and they gotta have accountability, and they gotta have men around them that hold them up to a higher standard. Because if they just go back to the same environment, if they're living in their mom's basement and they don't talk to anyone, then, or they go and escape into their bedroom after they work at a job they don't like, and they play video games, and their wife's sitting in the other room taking care of the kid, nothing's going to change. And so someone has to be that pillar, that lighthouse that shows them a better way, and that speaks up and holds them accountable. It might be challenging. So that would wrapped up, that would just be challenge the status quo, challenge who they're what they're acting like. They got to have some challenge as a man to be better. That's where I'd start.
I love that, Amos. I wrote down a ton of that stuff. I never really thought about that. I've kind of intuitively known it, but didn't know how to put it in words. To start with what you know is true. Like before you can get to sometimes like the biblical truths and like that big stuff, you just have to break the cycle, like you said. And I think for probably all of us on this call, you are obviously big in sports and exercise. You're a trainer. We know in our own lives how important that is. I mean, we miss a day or two of working out here. It's like, dang, you start feeling lazy. You don't feel good, unmotivated. And you start thinking about stuff. Then you get in the gym, and the next day you're like, oh, I feel fine again. Yeah. So that is an important thing. So starting with what's true, and just kind of breaking that cycle. I think that's really, really cool. And I like that term. Start with what's true. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that reminds me of I think it's I almost said Tim Keller, but I think it's actually Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss, in his book Tools of Titans, he says, there's been times in my life when I've tried to rework my whole life purpose, when really all I needed was a 30-minute nap and some macadamia nuts. And it's like, that's exactly. So true, right? Like we're trying to be like, God, I'm just not on point, and this and that, and pray for like eternal change, and I need to rework my whole friend group. It's like, bro, you just need 8 hours of sleep and a leg day, you're good. So I like that too, just kind of keeping it simple. So okay, I want to continue down on that thread, but I want to keep this one quick, just kind of lightning round. When you hear the words man of character, I think that means a lot of things to different people. What does it mean to you, Amos? What does that mean to be a man of character?
Yeah, I knew you were gonna ask this here. So
no looking at the teleprompter.
Right. So the first thing that comes to my mind would be, it's who you are when no one is looking, first of all.
Love that.
Second of all, it's about being humble. That's the second word that comes to my mind, is being humble and having different characters all together inside of that one character. So that the personality traits and the morality that you have, and how you approach your entire life, you are someone who pursues excellence. And what I mean by different character traits, I've laid it out in 5 different character traits before to make it easier for me to really interpret what I mean by man of character. And so I will go and kind of go down the line of what I had laid out before. But the disciple, so a disciple is someone who is a lifelong, well, you're always learning, you're humble, you seek God out, you worship, you pray. That's a disciple. And then on top of that, you are a lover. The Bible talks so much about love. You reflect God's love. I mean, love God above all else, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And so you are gentle, you forgive, you're a friend, you're generous. You're a worker. The worker is you do everything to the best of your ability. And then you recognize when you're not, and you get right back to it, even if you're tired, even if you don't want to. That's what a worker does. You're a warrior, which means that you discipline yourself. Again, it's dealing with that discomfort of doing what you have to do, even when you don't want to do it, which I struggle with. We're a pleasure-seeking culture, and we live in a world of ease and comfort. So I have to force myself. Just like Paul says, he beats his body so that he can stay true to being a Christian man. And then, and you take care of your body, you take care of the temple. And then finally, the leader. And this is on top of it all. Now that I have all the disciplines, the things that are expected of me, the leader is when you can step out and actually change someone else's life. You can stand apart. You can be confident in Christ. You're not afraid to say what you need to say in every situation. So that's a long answer.
No, it's good.
But there's a lot to it, and it's something that I'm always pursuing. It's not something that you're ever perfect in. So pursue excellence, pursue wisdom, and all those things.
So, Amos, just from chatting with you a little bit, and you and Kyle kind of got into this, and we just shared mutual heartbreak for people that are in situations that are not ideal, right? I think you said it at the beginning, our prayer before this call is, God, sometimes we pray for things and we don't get answers we want. And you said some big callings there in terms of warrior and leader and worker and all these things. My question is, as a man of character, that's a very high calling that you just laid out. What is our calling to go into those situations? Broken world, right? It's a fallen world. It's a broken world. We're all struggling with sin. We're all hurting each other. We're all imperfect. Even our prayers are self-centered and, have to do with idols and this and that. Like, God, please bless me with more money so I can buy more things I want, and please people that I have in my life, all that. So I want to ask you the question of, what is our calling as men of character with all those definitions you laid? Like, how are we called to act in the world, right? When we're experiencing brokenness. An example that came to mind too is the public school situation. My fiance was a music therapist in the public school system. As a really strong Christian woman, that was really hard for her, of where you shine your faith and where at other times you dim it down. Our last guest, Brian McKenzie, he talked a lot about authenticity, of how he was coaching his kids' Pee Wee football team. And, he showed up and said, hey, if I'm your coach, if I'm going to coach your kids, I'm going to lead through the Bible, and the Bible is going to come out of me. I'm not going to try, but it's who I am. So we love that. But my question to you is, what does that look like, right? We're all 3 of us, we're going to deal with heartbreak. We're going to deal with the brokenness of the world. We're going to deal with situations that we're probably going to have to get our hands dirty. I guess just like, where does your head and heart go? Not everybody watching this, life isn't always perfect. And how do you advise guys, and how do you handle some of those situations yourself?
Yeah, good tee up, and so important to talk about this. And that's one of the main purposes of, being a man of character. In the examples you described, they absolutely are doing that. So it's standing true to your convictions and who you are, no matter what's happening around you. I mean, you're a pillar of your morality and what the Bible says and what you stand for and stand on. And people will see that. People will be affected by that. But I do find myself thinking that there is a point of being a leader to the point where you are constantly calling people up to a higher standard, which begs you to constantly be taking care of yourself and your issues and dealing with them. And so it has to start with removing the planks in your own eyes so that you can remove the speck in your brother's eye.
Yeah.
And we don't even feel confident we feel like a hypocrite if we even try to help someone and we know that deep down we do the same thing, or we do something else that we struggle with. So if you truly want to take a step out from just being that pillar of character, which is very beneficial. Again, people see you, people hear you, they know you're different, and they know you don't change and sway with whatever culture or crew that you're rolling with on any given day. But to take the step out means you are setting yourself up as a leader. You're saying, I am able to give you direction because I have dealt with this and I'm constantly dealing with it. So to do that, again, remove the planks in your own eye. But then to take that step further, it looks like whenever you think of a situation where you want to insert yourself, or you see that there's an issue, you see that something ungodly is happening, or you see it going down a bad trajectory, taking responsibility in that moment to say something, to do something, or at least offer, because it's going to go the same direction if nothing external ever happens to it. And so if you insert yourself, it at least gives God the opportunity in a different conversation that would have never happened to open up convo. I think where people fall off and where I have told myself not to is that someone else will say, well, no, let's just wait, or no, you don't really know them, or no, it's not the right time. You get talked out of it pretty easily. And I'm starting to think that I'd rather just say what I need to say in these situations instead of letting it go, because I just don't know. I don't know unless I say something.
Right. Yeah, man, that's hard. I think we can all relate to that. And I think there's a lot of guys watching this, young guys. A majority of our viewers are young guys who want to be better men. They want to be godly leaders. It's not always the easiest calling. It's going to be a lot of being uncomfortable and all that. So, man, if you got the answers for that one, we got to hear it, Amos, because we certainly don't.
That was kind of my question, Amos. I think even doing this, like this podcast, we're trying to do something well and like share our faith and inspire people with hope. And then sometimes we fall short in areas of our life where we might struggle with a sin here, or we do this because we're not perfect guys. We're the first ones to admit it. And sometimes you hit on it too. You kind of feel like a hypocrite where it's like, man, you feel like you should be doing better. Like, how can I get up here and talk to people on here, but I'm struggling with stuff. And I think there obviously we're not perfect guys either, but there has to be that element of grace too, where it's like, we're not perfect guys, but I think you keep touching on it. It's like, it does force you to have that higher calling and a higher standard, maybe is a better term. Like, if you want to be on here and talk the talk, you have to be walking the walk as well too. So I just think that's so important.
That's a really good point, the way you said that, because it goes both ways. You can come at it with, I have to clean up my act before I talk to anyone else.
Yeah.
Before I can set myself up as a leader. But what I do pretty often, and this would be advice that I give, is put yourself in a leadership role before you're ready for it.
Yeah.
Because as a man, you don't want to let people down. You don't want to look like a fool. And when you're held responsible, when you know you're held responsible and people are looking at you, you want to be a man of integrity. You want to follow through. So like 75 hard, I've never done it before. I'm confident that I can. But what I did was I didn't just go at it alone, where I didn't have anyone to talk to. In order to ensure that I followed through, I reached out on Facebook, said, hey, who wants to do this with me? I'm starting on Monday. 7 people said, yep, I'm in. Made a group chat, and I take full responsibility to lead them through it. And so I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to let them down, because I'm leading the way. So that was a really good thing that you brought out right there. It can go both ways. Put yourself in a leadership role before you're ready, and it'll force you to a higher standard if you're a man.
For For sure. And one thing I'll say, and then I'll let you jump in.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that's been on my heart, and I read this, and I've shared it with our group. We do a morning call twice a week with one of our buddies, and I read it. Ironically enough, it's going to sound weird, but it was an accountability app for like your phone, where you can have accountability partners to make sure you're obviously not looking at things. And there was a comment, you can read the comments on these apps, and this guy said one of the most interesting quotes I've heard. I can't remember the context, but basically, a guy was complaining like, yeah, I'm struggling with pornography and lust and stuff. He's like, well, how are you struggling? And he thought about it. It's like a lot of times with sin in our life, whether it be lust, pornography, anger, whatever, we say, man, I'm just struggling with it. But that struggle is you just your own willpower, and you're getting rolled over, and then you feel like you're losing. So like, how are you struggling? Are you having an accountability app? Are you talking to other guys, getting into an accountability group? I think the accountability piece is so important, especially as guys, because we don't want to let other guys down. And we need those guys sometimes to come behind us and kick us in the butt. And so I think that's just a call for guys watching this, whoever might be watching this. If there's an area in your life where you're struggling, how are you struggling? Are you struggling because you're trying every single thing to get past that? Or is it, I'm struggling because I keep falling in? So I think just more of a comment. I thought it was just so interesting. And I think there's a lot of guys who do struggle with lust and pornography. So I guess if you're watching it kind of on a tangent, you're like, you kind of have to question, am I reaching out for help? Am I taking the steps necessary to defeat this? So I think the accountability piece you talk about, Amos, is so crucial, especially on a topic like that, where it's like, it's just so important. I love the accountability. I have that down, and putting yourself in the leadership role before you're ready. I think that's important too, because it does force you to that higher standard, and you're going to grow as a man, maybe through falling down here and there, but ultimately it makes you stronger over time. So I think that's good advice for anybody watching, is put yourself out there before you're ready.
Yeah, we were joking that saying that you're struggling but not fighting back would be like the equivalent of going to the gym. You load up 225 on the bench, you hold your arms out and you just drop it down and you're like, I'm struggling to move this. Like, dude, you got to move it. Like, move that weight. Yeah. Like, the weight's moving. You got to move it back, man. So it's like I think a lot of guys are getting whooped by sin. They're not struggling. Like, it's a one-way fight. Yeah. Sin is having their way with them. So that's good. And I hope that's something that we can encourage guys with. But number of questions here, Amos. I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit. I don't want Kelsey to come find us in Minnesota and yell at us for taking your whole night. But I just want to dig a little deeper about being bold men of our faith, like being men who are willing to have those conversations. So many of these things are dichotomies, right? We're talking about how you have to have grace and be patient with yourself, but also you have to hold yourself to a higher standard, right? That sounds like it's kind of contradicting. I think this is too, in the sense of, as Christian men, we're supposed to trust that God can handle any situation, but we're also telling ourselves we need to be more bold because we have faith in God. And that sounds kind of contradicting, right? Of, if you have so much faith in God, why do you have to have these tough conversations? But biblically, I think that it's very true, right? God called men to go into situations, take care of business, risk their life. I mean, Jesus literally laid down his life for what he believed, as did a lot of his followers. So what does that look like to you? I mean, like, how do you practically go about that? I know you talked about some tactics for coaching and things like that, but if you see a situation, or if you're dealing with a situation in your life and it's going down that ungodly route, like what do you do? How do you interject into that situation in a loving but bold and strong way?
Yeah, good question. And to touch on what you just talked about, yeah, I mean, God uses us. He loves to use us. He can do it miraculously, but he wants to use us in those situations. So praise be to God that I get to be a tool that he uses, even though I'm sinful and not very effective half the time. But the first thought I have on approaching a situation like that, it comes back to, the passage that talks about, for a church specifically, like if you find someone who is in sin, then you approach them just one-on-one, first of all. You don't do it to make a show. You don't do it where you're trying to humble them or make them feel shameful. But just in gentleness, you approach them one-on-one and say, look, I wanted to talk to you about this situation. I personally don't appreciate the way that you talk to your wife in front of us in public. It makes us feel uncomfortable. And do you actually feel that way about your wife? Is there something going on? And then dig into the situation. And if he's like, no, and this is like if a husband talks bad about his wife in public, which happens all the time,
Totally.
all the time.
Mhm.
For the most Christian men, it's just some cult, something.
Mhm.
But I would ask, like, do you actually feel that way about your wife? No, I don't. Can I ask, why do you talk bad about her in front of us at family dinner? And just ask him straight up. And just that one question can kind of just be like a slap on the face, wake up call. So that's what you do first of all. And then the passage goes on to say, if they don't listen to you, then bring in 2 more people, maybe from the church that you're both a part of, or if you know them elsewhere. I'm not sure exactly how that would look, but I would continue to ask the same questions until they just say, look, leave me alone. I don't agree. I'm not going to change. At that point, they've committed to their sin. And then the Bible says, let them stay in it because they're not going to change, and they've convicted themselves. And then you have to let your character shine after that, because you're not approaching them directly, but they're still seeing you and interacting with you in different ways. So that's what it looks like. It can be dangerous probably in certain situations. Like we were just talking about my sister, and if she's struggling with her husband, and they might get a divorce at this point, domestic abuse and stuff like that. If I went down there and talked to him, like, dude was in the military. He's got guns just around the corner, like every nook and cranny of the house. And so you gotta decide, if you're gonna be bold, and if it's and say a prayer beforehand if you think that's the right way to go. But God likes to use us for those situations. That's just the way it is. He can convict someone through his word, but if someone totally rejects the word, you might just need a man to stand up and say, what do you think it means to be a man? Because to me, it means taking care of your family and having a family that is protected and cared for and loves you. That's what it means to be a man to me. Because you say that to him and he's like, well, I'm not doing any of those things. Hopefully that message gets through to him. And I didn't even mention the Bible. So you don't always have to mention the Bible.
Yeah,
kind of like we talked about before. What's true. You can see with your eyes, like, this family loves each other, this family doesn't. That's just the truth that everyone knows. You can see it. So yeah.
That's good. Geez, I'm just unpacking that. I feel like we're getting deep, talking about some more real stuff, which I love that, man. We actually had a guy who commented on one of our videos that we posted on Instagram this morning, and we were talking about like trusting God's timing, and this guy commented, he's like, I don't trust God anymore. He's let me down too many times. And as you were just saying that, I don't think trusting God always looks like just sitting in your prayer closet and just being secluded from the world. I think sometimes it's going into a conversation with a guy that you might not know that well, that might have automatic rifles in his closet, and you might be telling him a message that he doesn't want to hear. And that's a calling of godly men that I don't think that we always get as excited about or get into that level of, vulnerability. So I just appreciate you sharing that, man. And that's something we're trying to do a better job of on the show too, is just being real, right? Like, life can be scary, it can be hard, it can be sad, and all that. So yeah, I guess just kudos to you for sharing that. And shoot, man, I think you're the guy for the job. I think you're going to go in there and be involved in the way you're supposed to and have that difficult conversation. And there's a lot of people in your corner. So I guess a question that is tied to that, and this is a more generic one, but Kyle and I were talking about this recently. I think this gets lost too in the context of Christianity, is spiritual warfare, right? Where, even that guy saying, I don't trust God, he's let me down so many times, probably not really cognizant of the fact that we do have an enemy, and it's not of this world, it's not of flesh and bones. So what's your view, Amos, on spiritual warfare? And what are some of the tools you use when you're going to spiritual battle? You've already shed a light on a few, but I guess just talk through your views on spiritual warfare from a high level.
Yeah, this is a topic that I come back to every now and again to see what my thoughts are all together, because I don't necessarily fully understand what it looks like. But if I were to say what my belief is on it or what I think it looks like just right now, I would say it's any and every single situation that takes you away from living life as a godly man in as much that it influences the people around you. Because like we were just talking about, God uses us. We get to be the image of God to people. We get to reflect his love. We get to carry out good works in the name of God, like a doctor taking care of a patient. That's all part of God's handiwork. So any situation or any time that I'm drawn away from, like I said, being a man of God in a certain situation and carrying out the fruits of good works, I think that's spiritual warfare. I think it's easy for the devil at this point. I think we don't think of it as spiritual warfare anymore, because to me it looks like, oh, you're sitting down and you're eating ice cream again for the 8th night in a row, and you're not saying bedtime prayers with your kids for the 8th night in a row. That's spiritual warfare. And it's so easy because all it is a bucket of ice cream. And the feeling that you deserve it after working all day. And we've just kind of been fed that stuff since we were kids. So if you ever read something like Screw Tape Letters, I mean, the demon just uses whatever situation or scenario and just twists it. He just twists it a little bit. He uses regular things that happen to us. And it's so easy. So easy.
Dang, that's the first time we've talked about ice cream being spiritual warfare on this show.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I don't like that, Amos. I'm always convincing this man to go get a DQ Blizzard. We got one actually this Saturday, and we both regretted that. It felt like spiritual warfare after that.
That was a good answer based on how we felt after that. I think you might be onto something.
There was some warfare going on. So,
man,
but that's different.
Quick,
like what's different is doing stuff together to a point. Like I talk to guys just real quickly. Like I talk to guys about watching TV shows in bed or whatever as probably not the most effective way to be intimate with your wife, right? Because you're just sitting next to each other, you're staring at a screen, and then you go to bed right away. And it can really just, it kills your testosterone. Like you don't even want to be intimate physically after that, typically. But it's better than doing it by yourself. Doing it by yourself is a version of escapism. That's something where you're not doing anything for anyone. Right. And I've fallen victim to that all the time. And so I'm trying to totally eliminate that from my life because it doesn't benefit anyone. And there's better ways for me to relax that actually make me more beneficial to other people. Right. If I watch a TV show, typically it gets you in that cycle and you want to watch a second one, and now you're wasting time. So having a blizzard with your friend is great.
Would question that one, but I guess I'll give it to you for this time. Did Kyle pay you to say that? Is he Venmoing you?
Yeah, I'll Venmo you after this. He's like, look,
just give me a blizzard coupon.
This episode brought to you by our friends at Dairy Queen.
Thanks to our sponsors at Dairy Queen. It's funny. No, to answer your question, I don't. Do you have anything else, or I can close it down here?
So I just wanted, Amos. There's a lot of guys that are going to be watching this. There's a lot to take from this, right? Like you're a big picture guy. You're a visionary guy. Your name is Amos. Amos was a visionary. That's you. Let's just get practical. Guys watching this video, I need your sticky note to-do list of tips. They say, hey, this Amos guy, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. This man's got brothers, grandparents, great-grandparents, uncles. They're all pastors. He's named after a prophet. I want to boil this message down. They're going to skip to the end. This is the Instagram reel clip we're going to share with you, Amos. We need your 3 top tips, just very quick hitters, practically getting down, taking the kind of the best of Amos, volume 1, pulling this out. And guys are going to wake up tomorrow morning and start doing those things. What are your 3 quick hitters?
This is a difficult question, but I'll do my best here.
You got it. You've been drinking a lot of coffee.
Right. It comes down to being a man of character. So if I were to distinguish that into 3 quick things, it would be, you got to be humble and always willing to learn and grow. Know that you don't know everything. Always seek more wisdom. Second thing is actually be a man of character to the best of your ability in all of your responsibilities in life. So just look at all your responsibilities in life, do them well, do them excellently, take care of yourself, take care of your responsibilities. And then the third thing is be quick to listen and be in conversation with people. Instead of isolating, instead of escaping, you're sitting at home, working from your computer, watching a TV show, being on your phone. If you ever find yourself in a situation like that, go out and talk to people. Whether they're Christian or not, doesn't matter. Just make connections, get into conversations, listen, learn, observe, and then insert yourself with the godly wisdom that you've gathered from being in God's word.
Oh, I love that. There it is. Well, Amos, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it. You jumping on here, spending this evening with us. I don't know. I feel pretty encouraged. Just a lot of good wisdom, especially at such a young guy, 26-year-old, married kid. You're just doing so well. I think it's inspiring for a lot of guys who aspire to be in a position like you. So like I said, just thank you for being on here.
Yeah, and I got to say too, if you watch this and you didn't find any value in this episode, you got to rewatch this and turn it on over again, because there's a ton. Kyle's got a small PDF of information here. He's got 2-3 pages of notes. Yeah. So, hey, and again, Amos's course, Men of Character, we're not affiliated in any ways. We're Men of the Kingdom. He's Men of Character. We have no promotional ties to him at all. We just love what he's doing. And as you can see, you can probably understand why if you watch this far. So if you don't have anything else, I'm going to take the liberty of trying to close this one out. So Amos, we appreciate you, man. Keep up the great work. And if you watch this far in the episode, you're on the right track. Take this information, apply it, become not only a member of the Men of the Kingdom, become a man of character, and your life will start moving in the right direction. We can all promise you that. So if you stuck with us this far, we appreciate you. And until next time,
keep advancing the kingdom.